Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome for the first time if you're new here. Today, we're tackling a question that's haunted humanity since, well, forever. How long does a soul remain on Earth after death? It's one of those mysteries that keeps us up at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what happens when the lights go out. Does the soul zip off to some cosmic destination right away? Does it linger to tie up loose ends? Or does it get stuck here, wandering among us? This isn't just a question about death. It's about life, love, and what we leave behind. We're going to explore it from every angle. Spiritual traditions, eerie ghost stories, scientific theories, cultural legends, and what people today believe. It's a big journey. So grab a snack, get comfy, and let's dive in. Oh, and if you're as obsessed with these big questions as I am, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so we can keep exploring together. Ready? Let's go. Before we get rolling, let's frame this up. When someone dies, we often feel them around us, like a whisper in the air or a shadow in the corner of our eye. Is that their soul still here? Or is it just our hearts playing tricks? Different cultures, religions, and even science have wildly different answers. Some say the soul's gone in a flash. Others think it hangs out for days, months, or even centuries. So let's break it down step by step and see if we can find some clarity, or at least some really good stories. Spiritual and religious perspectives. Let's kick things off with the spiritual side. For billions of people, religion offers the first roadmap for where the soul goes and how long it sticks around on earth before heading there. These beliefs aren't just old texts, they're living traditions that shape how we say goodbye and what we hope comes next. Starting with Christianity, the soul's journey after death is pretty straightforward, at least on paper. When you die, your body stays here, but your soul? It's believed to leave almost instantly. The Bible's Ecclesiastes 12:7 puts it poetically, "The dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it." No pit stops, no detours, just a straight shot to judgment. For some, that means heaven or hell right away. For Catholics, there's purgatory, a sort of spiritual layover where the soul gets polished up before the final destination. But here's where it gets juicy. Despite the official no lingering stance, Christian history is full of stories that suggest otherwise. Think about apparitions of saints, like Saint Teresa of Avila, who some say appeared to her nuns after death to offer guidance, or even everyday tales of loved ones showing up in dreams or at the bedside to say one last goodbye. My grandma swore she saw my grandpa standing by her rocking chair a week after he passed, smiling like he forgot something. Was that his soul sticking around for a bit, or God letting him pop in? Christianity doesn't give a clear timeline, but those moments make you wonder. Next up, Islam. Here, the soul's journey has a unique twist with something called barzakh, an in-between realm after death. When someone dies, their soul doesn't rush straight to paradise or punishment. It hangs out in this waiting zone until the day of judgment. The Quran's a bit vague on the details, but some hadiths, sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, hint that the soul might linger near the body or family for a while. There's a tradition that says the soul can hear the footsteps of mourners walking away from the grave, which is hauntingly beautiful if you think about it. Scholars debate how long this earthly connection lasts. Some say a few days, others suggest it's until the body fully decomposes. There's even a story about a man who died in battle, and his wife claims she felt his presence every night for a month, guiding her through her grief. Was that his soul tethered to her until she was ready to let go? Islam doesn't set a firm clock, but it leaves room for the soul to hover close before moving on. Now let's head east to Hinduism and Buddhism, where reincarnation flips the script. In Hinduism, the soul, called the Atman, is eternal, cycling through birth, death, and rebirth based on karma. When someone dies, the soul doesn't bolt immediately. There's a mourning period, usually 10 to 13 days, where rituals like Shraddha help it detach from this world and move toward its next life. Family members offer food and prayers to ease the transition, believing the soul's still tied to its old life until those ties are cut. But if the death was sudden or the soul's weighed down by unresolved desires, like a merchant obsessed with his gold, It might linger as a preta, a restless ghost. I read about a village in India where a woman's spirit supposedly haunted her home for years, crying for her lost child, until a priest performed a ceremony to free her. That could take weeks, months, or longer. It's all about the soul's baggage. Buddhism's take is a little different. There's no fixed soul, just a stream of consciousness that flows from one life to the next. After death, this stream drifts through the bardo, a transitional state, for up to 49 days. Tibetan Buddhists hold rituals every 7 days to guide it, believing it might still hear or feel the living. Imagine that, your essence floating around, deciding its next move for over a month. It's wild to think about. Then there's the rich tapestry of indigenous and animist traditions. These vary so much, but they often see the soul as deeply connected to the earth and community. In some African cultures, like the Yoruba, the dead become ancestors who stick around indefinitely, not as ghosts, but as spiritual guardians. You honor them with offerings, and they guide you from beyond. There's no leaving Earth deadline. They're part of the family forever. In Native American tribes, it's different. Among the Lakota, the soul might linger for 4 days after death, a sacred time before it journeys to the spirit world. The Navajo believe spirits can stay longer if death was untimely, sometimes causing trouble until rituals send them off. I heard a story from a friend whose Navajo uncle passed in a car accident. For weeks, the family heard knocks and whispers until a cleansing ceremony quieted things down. Was that his soul, reluctant to go? These traditions don't always pin down a timeline, but they tie the soul's stay to relationships in the land. So, spiritually, the soul's earthly stay could be a quick goodbye or a long, drawn-out farewell. It depends on who's telling the story. What's your take so far? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Paranormal experiences and ghost stories. Okay, let's get spooky. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, ghost stories have a way of sticking with us. They're everywhere. Grandma's attic, that creepy house down the street, even your favorite horror flick. If souls linger on Earth, the paranormal world might have some clues about how long. One idea that keeps popping up is the 40-day window. It's almost universal. In Christianity, Jesus ascended 40 days after his resurrection. In Islam, some say the soul's presence fades after 40 days of mourning. Even in secular ghost hunting, investigators notice a pattern. Activity spikes right after death, then tapers off around 6 weeks. I talked to a paranormal researcher once who said, that's when the soul figures out it's time to go, or gets forced out. Think about it. People see their loved ones in that first month and all the time. My cousin swore her cat, Whiskers, kept jumping on her bed for weeks after he died, always at 3 a.m. like clockwork. Then poof, it stopped. Was that Whiskers' soul saying goodbye for 40 days? It's a neat theory, but not every spirit follows the rules. Paranormal folks split hauntings into two camps, residual and intelligent. Residual hauntings are like a broken record. Same footsteps, same moans, night after night. Think of the Tower of London, where people hear Anne Boleyn's cries centuries later. That's not a soul, it's an energy imprint, stuck in time. No expiration date, it just keeps playing. Intelligent hauntings, though? That's where it feels personal. These spirits interact, moving stuff, whispering your name. Take the Bell Witch from Tennessee. Back in the 1810s, this entity tormented the Bell family for years, talking, throwing things, even poisoning someone, or so the legend goes. That's way past 40 days. Or consider the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana, where a girl named Chloe's ghost has allegedly been messing with guests since the 1800s. If these are souls, they're not punching a clock. They're here until they're done. That brings us to the big paranormal trope, unfinished business. The idea is, if a soul's got something left to do, say, reveal a killer or protect a child, it won't leave. I read about a case in Scotland where a woman's ghost haunted a bridge for decades after her murder, pointing at the river where her body was dumped. Once divers found her remains and gave her a proper burial, the sighting stopped. How long was she there? 50 years. Then there's the sweet side. My friend swears her mom's spirit stuck around for a year after cancer took her, leaving little signs, like her favorite song playing randomly. Until my friend graduated college. Was that her soul waiting to see her through? It's hard not to get chills thinking about it. So, ghost stories say souls can linger from days to centuries or forever. Ever had a brush with the unexplained? Tell me in the comments. I'm all ears. Scientific and psychological angles. All right, let's put on our lab coats. Science doesn't exactly send souls to detention, but it's got some thoughts on what's happening when we feel them linger. Spoiler, it's not all woo-woo. First, science asks, what even is a soul? To neuroscientists, it's probably consciousness. Your thoughts, memories, that spark of you, all wired into your brain. When you die, the brain flatlines. No oxygen, no electricity, no consciousness. Game over. Studies on cardiac arrest patients that show brain activity drops to zero within seconds to minutes. So if the soul's tied to that, it's not sticking around Earth, it's lights out. But then you got near-death experiences. People flatline, then come back talking about tunnels, lights, seeing their body from above. Dr. Sam Parnia's AWARE study tracked hundreds of these cases. Some folks even recall details they shouldn't know, like what doctors said while they were dead. Skeptics say it's just the brain hallucinating as it shuts down. But believers argue it's proof the soul detaches and floats nearby, at least for a bit. Here's where it gets trippy. Physics, the law of conservation of energy says energy doesn't disappear, it transforms. If consciousness is some kind of energy, and that's a big if, where does it go when we die? Some fringe thinkers, like physicist Sir Roger Penrose, talk about quantum consciousness, suggesting our awareness might be tied to tiny particles that don't just vanish. Could that energy linger on Earth, like a faint signal? There's no evidence yet, but it's a mind-bender. I stumbled across a wild theory online that says this energy could imprint on places, like a house where someone died traumatically, explaining hauntings without a soul at all. Imagine your essence as a Wi-Fi signal, fading but still detectable for a while. How long? No one's got a meter for that. Then there's the heart side of it. Psychologists say when we feel a soul's presence, like smelling dad's cologne years later, it's often grief at work. Studies on after-death communications show 60% of bereaved people report these moments, usually in the first 6 months. My uncle passed 2 years ago, and for months I'd hear his laugh in the wind. It was so real. Experts call it a coping mechanism. Our brain fills the void with what we miss. But here's the kicker. Some psychologists, like Carl Jung, thought it might be more. He believed in a collective unconscious, shared memories or energies that could make these experiences feel universal. So, is the soul lingering, or are we projecting it? Maybe it's both. Science says the soul's stay is probably 0 seconds or all in our heads, but those gaps in the data leave room for wonder. What do you think? Brain or beyond? Cultural stories and modern takes. Let's zoom out to the stories we tell. From ancient myths to TikTok trends, cultures have wrestled with this question forever, sometimes with skeletons dancing, sometimes with tears. Take Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. Every November, families build altars with marigolds and sugar skulls, believing their loved ones' souls come back for a visit. It's not a permanent stay, just a 24 to 48-hour reunion. I talked to a friend who celebrates it, and she said, I feel my abuelita's laughter in the room every year. It's like the soul gets a weekend pass. In Japan, the Obon Festival does something similar. Lanterns guide spirits back for 3 days in August. There's a tale of a fisherman who saw his drowned brother's ghost during Obon, standing on the shore smiling, then gone by dawn. These traditions don't say how long souls linger full time, but they keep the door open for drop-ins. Then there's fiction, which loves a good soul-stay twist. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, the king's ghost shows up months after his murder, demanding revenge, way past any 40-day rule. Dickens' A Christmas Carol has Marley's spirit rattling chains years later, warning Scrooge. Modern stuff like Coco ties it to Dia de los Muertos, with souls popping in as long as they're remembered. TV's obsessed too. Ghost Whisperer had souls lingering until their issues were solved, sometimes decades. I binged an episode where a soldier's ghost waited 50 years to apologize to his sweetheart, And don't get me started on Stranger Things. Those vibes hint at souls or energies sticking around in creepy ways. It's like every writer's got their own soul timer. Cultures and stories say the soul's stay is flexible. Days, years, or as long as we keep telling the tale. What's your favorite? Hit me up below. What do people believe today? So what about now in 2025? I scrolled X, Reddit, and beyond to see what folks think. It's a mixed bag. Some say the soul's gone the second the heart stops. Dust to dust, that's it. Others stick to the 40-day idea, citing family experiences. One person wrote, "My dad's soul stayed until we scattered his ashes, 3 months." Another said, "My sister is still here. Her old radio turns on every night, 5 years later." I ran a quick poll on Instagram. 60% said under a month, 25% said years, 15% said forever. What's your vote? Pause and pick in our poll right now. All right, let's land this plane. How long does a soul remain on Earth? Spiritually, it's instant to indefinite, depending on the faith. Paranormal tales give us days to centuries, or eternity for the stubborn ones. Science says it's probably nada, but leaves a crack for curiosity. Psychology says it's us holding on. In stories, they say it's as long as we need it to be. For me, it's personal. I lost my childhood dog, Max, and for weeks I'd hear his tags jingle in the hall. Was that his soul or my heart? I don't know, but it felt real. What about you? What's your story? Thanks for hanging out with me on this epic dive. If you loved it, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's keep asking the big questions together. Drop your thoughts below. How long do you think the soul stays and why? See you next time. Stay curious.